I'm resident of College for YouTube. Joel Sades. That's my buddy Patrick McCray. That's my buddy Alan Gallant. We're here to
Hello,
review the
Tony.
movie The Body Snatcher, directed by the legendary Robert Wise, produced by Val Lewton. Uh, there's a lot of who's in this. You got Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi is in this bad boy. What a cast here! Henry Daniel, Edith Atwater, Russell Wade. Cinematographer is Robert DeGracy. Uh, Music by Ray Webb. And the production company and distributing company is RKO Radio Pictures.
And classic.
RKO has put out some gems many times, and this is another one of them. So, guys, when did you first see The Body Snatcher originally?
I saw it on its when that big DVD package came out in the aughts, in the early to mid aughts. Is when I first saw those, because the Lewton movies were things I had heard a lot about, but they weren't necessarily that common. They, if they were in syndication packages, they kind of came and went.
They were.
And because Val was a producer rather than a director, really, they were even more elusive. Because normally the director's name would be the big thing that would be splashed all over it. Lewton was this kind of creature of film snobbery that you would read about, but you wouldn't really see unless you had very specialized circumstances, which I think is one of the reasons why that box set was such a landmark.
Yeah.
Alan, when did you first see
probably was a teenager, Saturday syndication package kind of thing, where they would have like two features. One would be, the creature from 20,000 Fathoms, and then the next one would be The Body Snatcher or whatnot. And I saw a lot of horror films that way, a lot of sort of, unheralded, at least in terms of what I knew. I knew Universal, but you got to see a lot of other cool stuff on my local Channel 7 mostly, which was the ABC affiliate, but they had a lot of local programming on the weekends.
I was 12 years old at the Uniontown Library, sitting across the room watching this. Instead of just reading the book I was about to rent.
And well done too.
Yeah. So they were showing this. I had no idea why they were showing this at the time, and I didn't ask. I just enjoyed the movie. Val Lewton is my favorite producer. Hell of a production guy. And this is just another one of his masterpieces. I mean, this movie is a really well told story. It's really well paced. Instead of involving supernatural creatures to a degree or making you think there's a supernatural element, you have a very normal, spooky element of grave robbing, a doctor trying to perform a miracle. And they use the School of Edinburgh in England for their third preference here. So medical school.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of that? Them using medical school as a storytelling method here?
Well, in the early 1800s, where this is set, there was a lot of literature. Obviously, Mary Shelley, Wollstonecraft did Frankenstein, which was less science fiction and more about human morality and et cetera, et cetera. But it had this kind of feel to it. And there was a lot of this kind of thing. And Poe comes along a few years later, and you're getting this texture of this darkness. And you're right, it's less or almost no supernatural, although it has those sort of build-up elements in places. But it is all about human evil, choices people make that go in the direction of evil, or obsession that turns into evil, various things like that. And of course, medicine was sort of starting to emerge, and you were having doctors. Before this period of time, doctors were not doctor. People with PhDs were doctor. People that had a doctor of philosophy were doctored. Medical doctors don't start happening until late 1700s, early 1800s.
Yeah, before that they were cutting your hair.
That's right. Basically, they were doing bloodletting and stuff like that, and they weren't they weren't necessarily learned in anatomy and things. And this guy even mentions the fact, I am learned in anatomy, and so it's a vanguard sort of era for all this sort of stuff. So it's medicine sort of at this point in time has this kind of dark connotation to it. There was a lot of body snatching going on because they were experimenting on cadavers. Nowadays, of course, we get people to voluntarily, donate their bodies to science after death. But in those days, they were digging up graves, et cetera, et cetera. And it really did become sort of a coin of the realm among certain people. And so there's a morality question involved in that as well. What's that all about? Is that really, to the normal, everyday person, I should say, not normal, but everyday person, that the morality is clear. That's freaking, wrong. But to the doctors of the time, they needed to figure out, okay, how does the nervous system work? How do the lungs inflate? All of these sorts of things that they were trying to find out to add to their knowledge of anatomy, so that they could actually maybe help somebody. So there's a bifurcation there, and this movie points it out quite nicely, I think.
Yes. Patrick, what did you think of them using a medical school as a storytelling method here?
It's real, it's brutal, it's necessary, and it's creepy. And it's just full of pain and danger in the name of something good, but they were so primitive they couldn't really get a lot of good out of it. But it was a necessary step to get to where we are. So there is something about institutions that are vaguely socially sanctioned, yet are incredibly savage, that is inherently really frightening.
Yes, and the pain and suffering associated with operating and surgery and so on was also, really scary.
I mean, you think about what that girl had to go through.
Right.
With the spinal stuff.
Would have had the crudest of anesthesia, which wouldn't be much of anything.
No, it was awful.
Yeah.
So, just and they only vaguely allude to it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all they needed to do.
Yeah, this was pre-ether. Ether was the first great anesthesia, and this was pre-ether. I mean, an adult might be able to get drunk before they had an operation or a tooth pull or something, but that was the extent of it.
Yeah, nowadays, if you get drunk, they won't open you up.
No.
At least here they didn't.
No.
So, because my former neighbor down the road, he long before he passed away, he had gotten drunk and hurt his leg. Well, he was taken down to the hospital, and they said, we can't open him up. We can't operate him. He's been drinking.
Right.
So,
but they couldn't mix that with the anesthesia or the whatever they were using. Even the local probably would have given him problems.
Yeah, craziness. How great is not just obviously Bela Lugosi here, but Boris Karloff as the driver who's digging up the graves.
Mr. Gray.
Mr. Gray, yeah. What did you guys think of him here?
He was brilliant. He put in his time in the provinces on stages. Again, I tout this a lot, but theater is my business, so I do appreciate that he had that sort of training before he even went into film. And he made choices, extremely strong choices about, okay, I resent the hell out of this guy. I took X amount of years off of my life. I went to prison for this guy. I'm getting something from him, whether he likes it or not. I'm going to get something from him. If I can't get money out of him, more money, then I'm going to get anxiety and torture out of him. And there's an intensity with which he plays that whole thing. And he's a psychopath. we understand that about him, especially after he decides, oh, I'll just bypass digging a hole. I'll just kill somebody on the street.
There you go.
So he kills the song woman.
Which I think is the greatest scene in the movie.
Oh, it's wow. You don't see it. You just hear it. You just hear it stops.
It's so good.
It's great. It is fantastic. It's very noirish, and it's in that era.
Oh yeah.
45. I mean, it's just all the shade and
all
shadow.
that negative space.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
It's
just
great.
this is the change that tells you everything.
Yeah.
But doesn't have to show you anything.
No. It's a great dramatic device and diversion. So he's Karloff is brilliant in these scenes with Toddy, and he's you can see what his intentions are. It's almost like he was a method actor.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a very modern performance.
Yeah.
And I got 2 words: the cat.
Oh my God, the cat! Yes, weirdly enough, there's mayhem and murder going on, and I'm a cat person, so I'm thinking as soon as that cat freaks out, I'm going, "Oh, the poor cat."
And so does, and he pets the cat. He strangled this guy, and the cat comes in. He's like, "It's okay."
Yeah,
that's that to me is 2 words for Karloff, and that's the cat. Yeah. It's what a great choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's so criminally good here. I mean, Boris Karloff was a great actor, and he was very delighted to get to work with Val Lewton when he had gotten cast in his first movie with Lewton, the first Lewton role he got. I'll finally be able to act instead of being under makeup so he was really excited.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was delighted to work with Lewton, and you could see why. I mean, he sells his ass off in every way, shape, and form.
I'm sorry, Alan, go.
And at this point in his career, he has already been an actor for over 30 years. I mean, he's 55 years old.
Yeah,
around approximately 55 years old when he makes his film. He doesn't look it; he looks much younger. But he brings all that pent up creative juice to bear in this film.
Yeah, good, Patrick.
Well, Joel, I gotta ask you a question out of ignorance, because which is where most questions come from. But we hear Lewton all the time. But really, with producers, you don't hear about that much. That they are so strong that they have this creative imprint that defines these movies. Lewton. So tell me, because I don't know. I know that Val Lewton's big deal. Val Lewton movie, and I've liked every Val Lewton movie I've seen. Yeah. But what made Lewton so creatively pungent that we don't talk about this as a Robert Wise movie? We don't talk about this as a Karloff movie or something like that. One of the people more directly hands-on associated with the creative process. So educate me, I really mean this, on what made a Lewton movie so important.
Well, number one, before I get into Lewton, and this sort of does get into Lewton, Robert Wise, was a protege of Val Lewton.
Okay.
So
he also worked for Orson Welles.
Well, yeah, but also too, Lewton was so good at getting talent to read this script. Number one, you'll like it, and people wanted to work with him because he didn't give people bad scripts. It's sort of like like Billy Wilder in a sense.
Billy Wilder was a writer and director.
Right, but when Lewton Lewton, who was a producer, who handed people scripts from people he knew who could write, he knew what he was doing in bringing in certain people, like the actor he brought in for this role. He wanted to work with those people because he knew how talented they really were, and he knew they would like the script. Luton's really overall value to horror, in a sense, is one, he shot stuff cheaply, but it did not look cheap.
No.
When you watch a Val Lewton movie, it's like you're watching a Hollywood production that looks like it could be a big budget film, but it's not expensive to shoot it.
Whoever his light director was probably has a lot to do with the way it's received, you know?
Right. And two, a movie me and Butch covered, I Walked with a Zombie. From a film standpoint, if there's one film any film student should see that's produced by Val Lewton, it's I Walked with a Zombie, because it's beautiful.
The thing about producers is, and what makes a great producer, are two things: money. Obviously, you have to have a bunch of it, and judgment.
Yeah.
A lot of producers from the so-called golden age, and when I say golden age, I mean right up through the 1960s and then even into the 70s in some cases. Robert Evans, for example, incredibly successful for a long period of time before he kind of petered out. But
he had that sausage business.
Yeah, he did. Bob Evans. But producers like that remind me of the old time producers in the theater, where they would like work with casting directors, and they would go, hey, you know, so and so, I want you to direct this for me. You've directed for me in the past. I like your work. You know,
sure.
Once they get established, they get like a Rolodex of people they know are high quality. They know what their vision is, and it jives with theirs. They have a vision for this script, or, you know, this story or whatever. But I mean, producers in the old days did everything from, you know, cutting deals for scripts to hiring and firing and doing all of that sort of thing, rather than just procurement, which some producers, that's all they do now is procurement. They get money. They might get, you know, figure out if we're going to do locations, what's going to be the most, you know, how much money do we have for that? So they'll budget too. Some of these producers, associate producers, will do that. And it's not like you have one producer and a couple of, you know, artistically inclined secretaries doing everything. And that was kind of the way it was done for a while. Maybe you'd have a casting director or something like that thrown in there that they knew well. But they also usually looked at the dailies. They looked at the you know, they'd come in and do a on-film audition or something like that. They'd look at that stuff. Okay, is this person bankable? Is this going to work? Blah, 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 that sort of thing. And it wasn't always the most famous person, depending on what their vision was. With Karloff and Lugosi, this is the only picture they did together, isn't it? Is this the only one they ever did?
No. I mean, they did The Raven. They did Black Cat. They did Son of Frankenstein.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They
were
both.
I about Black Cat, and I
things.
thought Son of Frankenstein was like Glenn Strange or something. He was in another one of them, though. So
he was in Ghost of Frankenstein.
Yeah. Yes. So they did then work together. Was this where was this in their pantheon?
You mean how is it considered?
Where is it?
Where does it fit in their production? I don't know.
Yeah, because it's 1945, so I wasn't sure.
Around Son of Frankenstein.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, Lugosi had such a weird career at this point. I mean, he went from founding the Screen Actors Guild to needing their relief within a year.
Yeah. Was this during the period in which he was also addicted to various substances?
I think he was certainly a boozer, at least.
Yeah.
Well, that happens.
Well, it does. And it did.
The book to read on that is Lugosi and Karloff by Greg Mank.
Okay.
That's the definitive work on it, and it's a fantastic book. It's one of the best books on Hollywood ever written.
What was their relationship like?
It sometimes was very friendly. Sometimes they were rivals. I mean, it was a collaboration. It was not a great friendship. It was almost sort of a Nimoy Shatner thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Collegial when working.
I think, yeah. I think ultimately, with Lugosi, pretty jealous. That Karloff took the part that Lugosi didn't want, which was Frankenstein.
Right.
Ultimately, he didn't want to be under all the makeup, and really, even though he did a makeup test for it, which no one has seen, and that Karloff, kind of this big, well, not that big, but this big sort of heavy browed Egyptian ends up getting all the parts from this Hungarian nobleman
and goes
A idol.
Yeah, and he gets the last name treatment, the same as Lugosi had briefly himself. Yeah, so yeah, I can understand that, I guess.
Oh,
there's that thumbs up. I don't know why that's always so creepy.
What's that?
It just did it again.
Oh, well, with Boris Karloff playing like the Mummy and also the Frankenstein's monster, if you will, you have, in order to, there was an actor, I forget his name, who was up for the role Jack Nicholson played in Witches of Eastwick, and he turned. No, not Denver. It was the actor who was in Blade Runner, not Harrison Ford, but his
Rutger Hauer.
No, the other guy who was the other detective.
What, Brian James?
No,
Edward James Olmos.
Yes, he turned it down. He turned that role down, and they asked him.
A good thing too.
Well, he was asked, "Do you regret it?" He goes, "Look, you don't win an Oscar by being stupid and turning the role down. So yeah, I do regret it."
Mm-hmm. I don't know that he would have won an Oscar in that role. I'm not as right for that role as somebody must have thought he was, but
yeah, somebody thought he was
also yet to develop a sense of humor.
Yeah,
which he later would.
Yeah. Yeah, and Nicholson he had all the tools to play that kind of role. He was kind of the devil incarnate in Hollywood.
It came down to being between Jack Nicholson and Louis Rukeyser, and they went with Nicholson.
Nice. So I mean, it's not just the willingness to play a monster under makeup, but it's also being secure in your own acting ability to know you can pull it off. Some people make great monsters. They're stuntmen, because often it's not just verbal work; it's the physical work of it.
Mm-hmm. It is, and of course there is very little. I mean, there's no real verbal work in the first Frankenstein film, but he does an amazing job. Even though he was dissatisfied playing those kind of roles, he's brilliant in that.
What a performance! And he got out of playing those roles too. He was able to parlay that into actually talking. And I think probably Bride of Frankenstein helped a lot, even though he didn't want to say the lines.
Yeah.
Well, he talks in Bride of Frankenstein. He
yes, he does.
Sentences.
He does,
and he's wonderful. It's such a luminous performance. It's one of my favorite performances, really. And several of my favorite performances are in that movie.
Yeah.
And including Una O'Connor as the redneck, the housekeeper. But I think him talking in that film didn't hurt.
No, I don't think it did either. It just kind of sort of added the dimension necessary for going on from there, in terms of what people thought about that and the way they observed it.
I've talked about this before. I think it's Mark of the Vampire. Mark of the Vampire, he's got that assistant named Andreas. Have I told you guys about this? Watch me, Andreas. It sounds like he's saying "Watch me undress" in a bad Tennessee accent.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's
Look great. At me, Andreas.
What's great about that movie is too, you don't really you're so hooked that Bela Lugosi is actually playing a vampire, and then there's the end.
Because he only played Dracula twice.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Lionel Barrymore in that movie. Oh my god. Um,
Cave Stars.
yeah, great actor, great actor. What's you guys' favorite scene in the Body Snatcher?
The 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 scene where the songstress is killed.
Yeah,
I mean, just as a piece of filmmaking, as a piece of
It's
cinematic storytelling and terror, it's hard to top.
it is. I'd also put in terms of the character development, Mr. Gray, the actual confrontation scene that he has with Bela Lugosi.
Oh wow!
It's like he's just circling. Have some more to drink. Have a
You'd
drink.
think I'd be mad, but I'm not.
I'm not mad. And then basically squashes his head with his tremendous strength, his claw hold.
And that's a Blade Runner. Speaking of Blade Runner, that's something Blade Runner took.
Yes.
yeah.
Because the replicants are incredibly strong. They can pull off stuff like that.
That's how he kills Mr. Tyrell.
The writer of the book of Blade Runner, the creator who created Blade Runner, the writer who didn't get to see the movie, but he did see an effects reel that blew his mind before he died, was very complimentary of David Peoples, that David Peoples saved that script.
David Peoples appealed to Dick, and there's no two ways around that.
No denying it. He had big appeal.
Dick stood up for David Peoples.
It's true. He did.
My favorite scene in this is the build up to the assistant going to go find Mr. Gray before the songstress gets killed. He actually asked her, "Do you know where Mr. Catman Gray lives?" And she's like, "No, I don't." She shakes her head. He tips her, and he walks. And when he goes to the door and he knocks, and the Catman Gray is excited to see him. He's like, "Oh, hey, come in,"
Yeah.
The ultimate businessman and the ultimate murderer.
Yes, that's the whole thing. That's why I enjoyed that scene where the attempt is being made to blackmail him, and he's just like, "Oh, really? Okay, let's have a drink." It's just like, it's chilling. It's just like, he just turns that on. That's that psychopathy. And that's why, Lugosi's character doesn't really, "You're not mad, what?" And he throws him off and gets him to sort of relax and get, half in the bag. It's a freaky scene. I like it a lot. I think he does a really good job. He's so committed to that character throughout this movie. And I don't know if this thing was shot in sequence or out of sequence or what it is, but that's one of the things about film acting that's usually quite difficult is getting that consistency of attitude and background and character and tone and intensity. All these things have to match up from scene to scene. And if they're shot out of sequence, you really have to be in it. You really have to have probably rehearsed it, at least with yourself through, so that you have that sense of that through line of the character, that sense of continuity. It's difficult. It's one of the most difficult things. It's technically difficult, and it can really throw you off as an actor to do that. And he does a brilliant job. So, like I said, I don't know if this one was shot in sequence or out of sequence, but technically it's always out of sequence if you have to stop, take a break, come back the next day. I
think Rope is the only movie I know of that was shot out of or shot in sequence.
In sequence, yeah. It makes sense because usually it's at the convenience of availability of set, availability of whatever.
Although George Cukor would often direct in sequence.
Yeah, I believe that. The ladies loved him. They loved his
A
voice.
ladies director, indeed. Imagine George Cukor remaking the Universal horror films.
Well,
We've
people
had a lot more.
And now a dance number from the Frankenstein
Exactly.
monster.
Well, the Creature from the Black Lagoon is going to get remade. I mean,
Is that another one of those reboot attempts? Like,
I don't know if it's going to be like part of a dark universe or not. I just know it's going to be remade.
The Del Toro Frankenstein looks great.
And I will say that the Dark Universe Wolfman worked. I love that movie. I really liked that movie. I didn't think I would because I'm so, I'm attached to the original. But that really worked well. That whole scene in the asylum was just absolutely,
Ironically, the only film and what we sort of think of loosely as the Dark Universe stuff that didn't work was the only film to bear the Dark Universe name, which was The Mummy.
Mummy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's because the Dark Universe was taken over by the star of the film, I think.
Yeah.
It had something to do with it. Why it didn't work as well. I wouldn't mind seeing Russell Crowe as Jekyll and Hyde. That would be kind of fun. That would be different because he's such a...
Yeah, that was written into in the movie, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was. But I think that the failure of that movie kind of scotched that whole thing, unfortunately.
Yeah. One day somebody will do The Mummy justice again.
Yeah.
One day. Who knows?
Like they got it right with the Wolfman, so that's cool.
What do you guys give this movie? Scale of 1 to 10?
It's 10.
It's a classic 10.
It's a great capital G great movie.
Yep.
Absolutely. I don't rate Val Lewton movies low usually, so I've always enjoyed watching his production and watching the films he puts out. So this did not have a big budget, but it worked. So because Lewton got mad. Lewton did get mad that the budget was very low for this.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't tell. It was shot for that budget, and in a way, I've always said you can get away with a low budget if you don't ask anything in the budget that the budget can't provide.
That's something I've always talked about with John Carpenter's Halloween. Initially, John wanted to, because it was initially called the Babysitter Murders. It was supposed to be more shot around town, but they didn't have the money for that. And the producer Ernie Blans said, "Well, let's call it Halloween since we'll set it on it's set on Halloween anyway."
Keep it suburban.
And well, guess what? It worked.
Yeah. Brilliantly.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that they only had to shoot those scenes and because of the low production, not enough money really worked. So
Roger Corman would have been proud. Roger Corman was proud, actually. He probably learned some of his tricks from.
I'm sure he did
from that film.
So there's an example of a producer who really stands out. Is Roger Corman.
Yes.
You can call those Corman movies, even though he didn't direct many of them.
No, but he had, he
the imprint
budget for and so he also was a great teacher. I mean, probably 75% of the major directors in Hollywood over the last 4 or 5 years.
Ron Howard.
Yep. They've all studied at the feet of the master.
If you go to Justin Beam's Facebook page, he did an interview with Roger Corman long before he passed. So
it'll be tough to do it after.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I guess you could stand at the viewing and just say, "Hi, Raj." So
no comment.
But it's a great interview. You should go check it out.
Well, he was very good about sharing his so-called secrets, his talents, and his
Roger in one way was the anti-Scorsese, and an interview with him while he was dead might work because Roger spoke so slowly and methodically. You would just think Roger was taking a very long pause.
Mm-hmm. That's right. The eternal pause.
What's tomorrow? Tomorrow's what? Thursday.
It's another
Thursday?
day.
Okay.
It is.
What do you guys want to do tomorrow night?
I have a suggestion, and
Sure.
it is a hell of a movie, a recent movie, but I think very good, and hopefully on its way to being a modern classic. Although it'll take about 5 years for it to really sink in. That's Violent Night.
Okay. I'll give it a
If you
watch.
have not seen it, I won't say anything to spoil it.
My wife has seen it.
I thought it was going to be one of these dumb Santa Claus killer movies. Nope. It's very different than that, and it's a hell of a lot of fun.
Cool.
Yeah, my wife saw this. She said it's really good. So too.
Did she like it?
Yeah, she liked it a lot.
Good. Trust you.
She watched it before me, so I haven't seen it
Wait,
yet.
which movie? Violent Night?
Yeah.
So you've seen Violent Night, Jewel?
No, I haven't. But
Oh, well, you need to see it.
Julie
So
has.
we can talk about it tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll watch it sometime tomorrow before we do it. So, link to Patrick McCray's Dark Shadows Daybook Unbound is going to be in the description box. Link to Alan Glant's YouTube channel, Colin Sport After Dark, is going to be in the description box. You gentlemen have a good night. Be safe.
Take care.
Bye.
All right.